Hey there, and welcome on back. As always, I'm Carl with Target's Attitude, absent-minded professor for knives and all things sharp. Pull up a chair, grab your pens and paper, class is about to begin. Today, we're doing a progression on what I did last week when I talked about blade shapes. After all, it's Monday, so it's knife basics, what you really need to know. What we're looking at today, traditional pocket knives and how to tell the difference between them. Yes, traditional pocket knives. Seem a little bit strange in today's world of liner locks, frame locks, and tactical knives? Not really. Not when you consider that probably a third to half of all knives sold are still traditional pocket knives, and not if you're into knife collecting. But before we get on to today's lessons, where I'll expand on that a little bit, let's get the syllabus work out of the way, shall we? If you're new to the channel, welcome. We do primarily knife reviews, occasional reviews of camping gear and survival gear. That comes out on Fridays. On Mondays, we do knife basics, which you really need to know, where we touch on some of the arcane terms and phrases that are used in the knife world. This way, those who are new to knives and new to collecting, they get an idea of what they're talking about, so that they aren't sitting there going, yeah, exactly, that's right. Instead, they actually know what's being said. For those of you who have been around for a while, welcome back. Only got one question for you, and it includes the new people as well, of course. And yes, you know what it is. Have you subscribed yet? Come on, man, it's so simple. Just hit that button right down there. Then you hit the bell next to it. That way you get notified every time I do a neat new video. Win-win situation. You never miss a neat new video. And the more subscribers I've got, easier it is for me to get all these neat new things to show you. But on with class, shall we? In today's world, as I say, a lot of people tend to think more along tactical knives and flippers like this Caligo from CRKT. This particular one was the official blade of the Blade Show back in 2016. That's one of the reasons why it's in my collection and not up for sale. But as you get into knife collecting, you'll find a lot of people start going more towards the more traditional pocket knives. And some people just prefer them all together. But the terminology gets really confusing. I mean, just as there's different names for different types of blades, there's a bunch of different traditional pocket knives out there. How do you know what they're talking about? Well, I can't go over all of them, but I'll go over a few of the highlights here and give you an idea. This is not a case. This is actually a Colt. They don't make these anymore because when Colt went through bankruptcy, the company that had the license to make them was told, nope, you can't do that anymore. You're watering down Colt's name. Until they get back on their feet, you have to stop doing it. And this is a Stockman. This is probably my favorite type of traditional pocket knife. It's named because it was used by a lot of people at the stockyards. And if you look at the knives, not all of them are 4-point, but all of them will have a clip point, a more traditional drop point, and either a sheep's foot or a spade point. Why? Because those were the blades most useful to the people who were working the stockyards. And as you can see, the blades are on both ends. Not all of them were that big. Some were bigger, some were smaller. This one is a Frontier. And I just this week found this in the bottom of my dad's old toolbox, which hasn't been opened in almost 18 years, so I've got to clean this one up quite a bit. But if you look at it, I say it is a Stockman. It's got the clip point. It's got the spade point. It's got the sheep's foot. This one was almost a Warncliffe, but it's not quite. It's still sheep's foot. Yeah, what they needed when they were slaughtering animals at the stockyard. And I may do a video on cleaning this blade up, just to show you how to do that if you ever find an old knife like this. But Stockmans aren't the only ones. Another very popular one is the Sod Buster design. This is a single-bladed knife. As you can see, it's got the traditional straight blade instead of a drop point or a clip point. This particular one is an older one from Case. And you can see Case did a nice little job on the blade. Need to polish this one up too, but this one is going to be fairly simple. Just need to hit with polishing wheel. As I say, Sod Busters tend to be bigger knives. They do make a Sod Buster Junior that's a little smaller, but it was a knife used by a sod buster or a farmer. I'm not sure why they called farmers sod busters and turned it into a derogatory term, because it wasn't always. But yeah, it was a basic knife that was useful for a wide variety of chores around the farm. Just good, simple, basic blade. You have travel locks. Again, a single blade design. This one happens to be from Case, and it was set to celebrate Halloween. This particular one is a lockback. Most travel locks are. And they tend to have a single drop point and a nice curve. Matter of fact, a lot of times it's hard to tell the difference between a lockback and a peanut because of this curve. It's just that the travel locks are lockback design. Beyond that, there's not a lot of difference between the two of them. But again, just a general design knife, very handy, very useful. Nothing special. You've got Russell lock. Now, the Russell lock is fairly new. Case only started making this pattern back in 2000. As you can see, it is a liner lock design, and it's got forward tang, so you can open it with your thumb. This one's kind of stiff, or your forefinger. Extreme clip point on this one. Most of them have that extreme clip point that almost makes it look like a harpoon. And this is proven to be a very popular design. I was very surprised at how popular it was. Of course, you've got your folding hunters. This one is an Uncle Henry. Folding hunters tend to be very large knives because they're designed to be used by hunters in the field. Most of them will have a clip point, and if they're a two-blade design like Uncle Henry and Case, they'll have a normal straight blade, because this is more useful for actually skinning the animal. If it's more like the Buck 110, you'll only have the clip point. but tends to be big because, well, if you're going to be using this one hunting deer, you need a bigger knife than some of these others to actually help you process your deal. And a lot of them come in a leather sheath so that they can fit on your belt. Not all of them, but most of them. You've also got the trapper design. This one is also a case, and as you can see, this one was put out for Christmas. The trappers are, again, tend to be a two-blade design. This particular one has a clip point with a little bit more belly on it than many clip points. And again, this one has a spade point. Some of them will have more of a normal straight point or drop point, but the spade point is much more useful and more traditional on trappers. Again, this one was, as the name implies, designed for people working a trapping line. Some of the older ones were as big as the folding hunters. Nowadays, they don't tend to be as big. But then again, you figure, if you're running a trapping line, you're not trapping deer. You're trapping smaller animals. So you don't need as big a knife. Fairly simple, right? And let's see here. Yeah, I wish I could show you first-hand examples of some of the other blades, but as I say, I tend to collect Stockman and trappers, so let's turn to that and see what else we can find here, okay? Okay, this is one of the more popular knife styles out there. This is a Barlow. Easiest way to recognize Barlow, as you can see, it's got two blades. This particular one has a clip point and almost a spear point. The big thing is that it's got the kind of oval shape and a large bolster on only one end. Compare that to, say, a canoe. You've got the blades on either end. In this particular case, they're both drop points, just that one is larger than the other. It gets its name because if you look at the handle, it actually looks like a canoe. Hence its name. Here's another two-bladed from case. This is traditionally called a doctor's knife. And will traditionally have a long, thin drop point. And you never know what this one is going to be. A lot of them have this sort of spatula knife because the doctors had to have something to spread salves on and that sort of thing, and occasionally mix things up. And it's called a doctor's knife because this is what a lot of doctors used to carry in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was just a general, good all-around knife that they could use for treating patients when they did house calls. As you can see, it's got two bolsters, one on either end, and it's got a much smaller bolster than the Barlow. This one is called a jackknife. Big difference between a jackknife and a Barlow. Barlow tends to be more oval, whereas the jackknife tends to be more conformed to your palm. Whereas the Barlow has a bolster only on one end. The jackknife is more like the doctor's knife with a bolster on either end. They tend to have a clip point and either a drop point or a traditional blade. And the last one I'm going to show you This one is called a Saddlehorn knife. It's very much like a jackknife, but it was designed supposedly to be used while you're in the saddle. And so the handle shape was a little different to make it easier to carry. And actually to get out while you're still in the saddle. This particular model, again a case, you'll notice has a clip point and a more traditional blade. They almost always have clip points. This traditional blade might be traditional, it might be a drop point, it may be a spade point. I've seen those as well. And there's a ton more I can show you. I mean, it's just on and on and on. You've got, I'd say, peanuts. You've got back pocket knives. You've got beaver blades. The list is endless. But at least this will give you a basis, show you some of the more common ones, give you an idea of how to identify them, and hopefully keep you from getting completely confused and flummoxed when you're talking to people at the next knife show and you're looking at something neat and new that you want to add to your collection. So there you have it. Quick basic rundown. I could go on for hours about the different types of knives, but I don't think you really want me to do all that on a quick YouTube video. But I may do some more on some of the more obscure knives later on. We'll see. In the meantime, I hope you learned something that's going to help you in your new hobby or not so new hobby, depending on how long you've been in this. And I hope you keep on continuing with me. It's a fascinating hobby. I love it. I think you will too. But in the meantime, I've got to get going, so I'll leave you with a couple videos right up here. Think you'll enjoy them. And of course, you can always hit this target right over here to subscribe to the channel. You take care of yourself, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.